Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pipe Report. So it appears that Congress is voting on an internet online censorship bill. Now, the bill itself claims it's directed against sex trafficking. And most people, when they read that, they say, sure, why not? But there are some dire consequences regarding this. What this bill would do, if it does indeed get passed, is going to enforce that online platforms such as YouTube, especially YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, etc., they basically have to create new regulations, new filters to block out anything that may be correlated to sex trafficking. So what this means, for example, I know I've reported on this in the past, I know Holly Seeliger has, and others, when there is human trafficking happening in, let's just say, Haiti, which we know it has, we would not be able to report on that anymore on YouTube. YouTube would essentially censor that. And they do that, or they would say they would do that, in the goodness of the public. That would help people, but I think it's backwards. I'm going to go over an article explaining why this is bad if this passes, but here is a quick summary of the bill itself. This bill amends the Communications Act of 1934 to specify that communications decency provisions protecting providers or users of interactive computer services from liability for the private blocking or screening of offensive material shall not be construed to impair the enforcement of or limit availability of victim restitution or civil remedies under state or federal criminal or civil laws relating to sexual exploitation of children or sex trafficking. The bill amends the Federal Criminal Code to specify that the violation for benefiting from participation in a venture engaged in sex trafficking of children or by force, fraud, or coercion includes knowing or reckless conduct by any person or entity and by any means that furthers or in any way aids or abets the violation. So what that kind of means is that basically companies like YouTube, they're going to be forced to crack down on any type of videos or any type of material that may be deemed related to sex trafficking. So if you think their algorithms now are stringent, if you think they are strong now, just wait until they have to even crack down more, or else they can actually be charged with crimes. It's going to get a lot worse. Here's this article. FOSTA would be a disaster for online communities. Frankenstein bill combines with the worst of SESTA and FOSTA. Tell your representative to reject new version of H.R. 1865. The House of Representatives is about to vote on a bill that would force online platforms to censor their users. The Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act might sound noble, but it would do nothing to stop sex traffickers. What it would do is force online platforms to police their users' speech more forcefully than ever before, silencing legitimate voices in the process. Back in December, we said that FOSTA was a very dangerous bill. Its impact on online spaces would not be as broad as the Senate bill, the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. That's about to change. The House Rules Committee is about to approve a new version of FOSTA that incorporates most of the dangerous components of SESTA. This new Frankenstein's monster of a bill would be a disaster for internet intermediaries, marginalized communities, and even trafficking victims themselves. If you don't want Congress to undermine the online communities we all rely on, please take a moment to blah blah blah, call your representative. I highly recommend you do this. I'm going to email mine about it. Gutting Section 230 is not a solution. So here they discuss Section 230. FOSTA would undermine Section 230, the law protecting online platforms from some types of liability for their user speech. As we've explained before, the modern internet is only possible thanks to a strong Section 230. Without Section 230, most of the online platforms we use would never have been formed. The risk of liability for their users' actions would have simply been too high. And that is key there. That is key because companies do not want to be charged with a crime. So they're going to be overly cautious rather than less cautious. They're going to censor anything that could be related to sex trafficking at all, just to make sure they are safe from this. As opposed to, well, wait a second, this is about sex, for instance, but this isn't really trafficking. No, they're going to make sure they are safe. They're going to make sure they are safe, and they're going to try to prevent anything that could get them charged with a crime. And I understand this from a business point of view. If all of a sudden a new law is passed and your business may have people in there that could be maybe violating that law, as a businessman or an owner or a manager, you are going to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that will have a negative impact on your company. So I understand why they're doing this. And that's why it comes back to the whole beginning of this, that we cannot go this direction, because this is one step toward compelled speech. This is one step toward online censorship, where you, as a person, as an analyst, as somebody who wants to express your opinion, you will be prevented to do that. Not necessarily from the government, but from the new laws the government is imposing on the online platform you are using. I kind of explained that earlier, what YouTube can do. They're going to want to be safe, or we're sorry. They're going to censorship more than less. So, Section 230 strikes an important balance for when online platforms can be held liable for their user speech. Contrary to FOSTA supporters' claims, Section 230 does nothing to protect platforms that break federal criminal law. In particular, if an internet company knowingly engages in the advertising of sex trafficking, the DOJ can and should prosecute it. Additionally, internet companies are not immune from civil liability for user-generated content if plaintiffs can show that a company had a direct hand in creating the illegal content. The new version of FOSTA would destroy that careful balance, opening platforms to increase criminal and civil liability at both the federal and state levels. This includes a new federal sex trafficking crime targeted at web platforms, but which would not require a platform to have knowledge that people are using it for sex trafficking purposes. This also includes exceptions to Section 230 for state law criminal prosecutions against online platforms, as well as civil claims under the federal law and civil enforcement of federal law by state attorney generals. Perhaps most disturbingly, the new version of FOSTA would make the changes to Section 230 apply retroactively. A platform could be prosecuted for failing to comply with the law before it was even passed. And that is one of the most damaging consequences of retroactive law. In terms of like legalizing marijuana, passing a law and using it retroactively could be a good thing. That means that all those people that are in jail currently for possession of pot would be released. However, when you reverse that, when you say that this crime is going to be enforced retroactively, that means you could have broken the law years ago when it wasn't a law, and now you are in trouble of it. Something stupid you did in your past could be a crime now in the future, even though the law never existed back then. So that's a dangerous precedent to set. Together, these measures would chill innovation and competition among internet companies. Large companies like Google and Facebook may have the budgets to survive the massive increase in litigation and liability that FOSTA would bring. They may also have the budgets to implement a mix of automatic filters and human sensors to comply with the law. Small startups don't, and with the increased risk of litigation, it would be difficult for new startups to find the funding they need to compete with Google. Today's large internet companies would not have grown to prominence without the protections of Section 230. FOSTA would raise a ladder that has allowed those companies to grow, making it very difficult for newcomers ever to compete with them. Let's see here. More dangerous still is the impact that FOSTA would have on online speech. Facing a threat of extreme criminal and civil penalties, web platforms, large and small, would have little choice but to silence legitimate voices. Supporters of SESTA and FOSTA pretend that it's easy to distinguish online postings related to sex trafficking from ones that aren't. It's not, and it's impossible at the scale needed to police a site as large as Facebook or Reddit. The problem is compounded by FOSTA's expansion of federal prostitution law. platforms would have to take extreme measures to remove a wide range of postings, especially those related to sex. And that's what it comes down to. The argument, I'll do this paragraph too. Where was I? Some supporters of these bills have argued that platforms can rely on automatic filters in order to distinguish sex traffickers' ads from legitimate content. That argument is laughable. It's difficult for a human to distinguish between a legitimate post and one that supports sex trafficking. A computer certainly could not do it with anything approaching 100% accuracy. I think that's what it comes down to. We know that the YouTube algorithm being used right now is definitely not accurate. I actually got a strike one time for discussing the second woman that came out and accused then Senator Al Franken of sexual misconduct. And I went over a Daily Caller article and I posted it on my channel like normal. And the next thing I know, I get a strike because of it. So I'm kind of wondering what the hell I get a strike for. It violated their guidelines. It violated their terms and services. Well, how is that possible? There was no swearing in it. I wasn't talking about sex trafficking like it's a good thing. I was literally discussing what happened recently with Senator Al Franken. And it was removed, and I got a strike for it. I did appeal it, and I won my appeal, but that's just an example of what can happen. What happened to me, if this gets passed, it's going to happen more and more. And it's only going to get worse and worse. So yes, we need to stop this bill. Definitely stop this bill. Contact your representatives and just tell them no. Because this may look good in theory, but if it comes with online censorship, it is not good. We do not need compelled speech. We do not need censorship. We just don't. And I'm done.